And we're live. All right. Do let me know if there's any issue with the sound. When I recorded the Incus OS launch video last week, the recording quality was pretty good, but the volume was way too low, so I had to boost it after the fact. I can't really do that for a live stream, so I've tweaked the microphone level again on my side. But I'm not sure if that's particularly good since I didn't have much time for testing. So just let me know. Otherwise, welcome back to an IncusOS live stream. This one is the first one after the kind of official public release of IncusOS, which we've been quite happy with the reception of. Things have been looking pretty good. I'm actually just looking at the page now because I didn't pay too much attention. We did have a security issue on Incus recently, so I think it's marked as affecting potentially IncusOS. We can see it here. Through Dependabot, yeah, Incus vulnerable. That does not impact us at all. So we can drop that. There we go. That should clear the issue. Yep, there we go. No more open security issues. Good. Yeah, so IncusOS is actually now publicly available. We've had pretty good, pretty great reception overall. I didn't check the stats super recently. Let me do that right now. On what we're dealing with for like YouTube views and the announcement itself. So YouTube, it's probably one of the top videos at this point already. Yeah, 4,600 people watched it. Quite a few people commented, which is good. And then on the forum side, the announcement itself has 7,700 reads, which is quite a bit more than what we normally get for an Incus release or something like that, which tends to be more in the 1,000 to 2,000 views. So yeah, that's looking very good. Some great feedback. A bunch of people testing it on a variety of hardware, anything from rented servers from the likes of Hetzner or VH, that kind of thing, to spare hardware at home, to actual production servers. We've seen a bit of everything. We've been trying to fix some of the most common issues, improve documentation where possible. So yeah, in general, very happy with how things have gone, and we still have a bunch of more things that we want to improve and sort out, including the topic of this live stream. All right, so let's try and take a quick look, as usual, over what's over the commits for the past few weeks. This is going to be a bit trickier because we've got more stuff, plus I didn't do a live stream last week, so that gets us at the 2 weeks mark, which is going to be quite a long list. That's still kind of documentation stuff. Still last week. You can see there's a lot that has happened around the time of the announcement, basically. Okay, 2 weeks ago, there we go. So that's kind of where we were at with the last live stream. Did some CLI improvements and all right. So just, again, I'm gonna go very quickly through what we've done. So we've got a variety of bug fixes on provider logic for like downloads and whatnot. We've got, we added some details to the text UI for the machine CPU and RAM directly in the UI. We've been improving the way we generate images so that we can generate an actual manifest that can then be used to generate changelogs. That's not something that we've made particularly prominent on the website or anything yet, but if you go on the image server directly and you look at one of the images, we actually do generate now detailed compressed manifest for every component, and we can then use that to generate changelogs. So if we look at the changelog for stable here, we should be able to open that. Where is it? Here. There we go. So that's the changelog that was generated between those two images, and that makes it pretty easy to see what actually happened. So we can see on the IncusOS, so the base image itself, a newer kernel was installed, older kernel is gone. So it was basically the update, and there was a change to IncusOSD itself. Then Migration Manager, kind of same story, update of that one. and then same thing for Operation Center. Maybe we can find a more exciting changelog. Let's see. So actually don't need any of those guys anymore. So it can go away. If I go back to, I don't know, the previous image, just trying to get like more of a gap. Changelog, sure, the changelog stable on this guy. Let's see. Yeah, kind of same story. So this one shows updates to the Incus packages themselves to pick up a package update. But yeah, we basically have now automatic manifest and changelogs being generated. That makes it a lot easier to also assign severity and handle security updates and that kind of stuff. So that's a very useful addition and something we added kind of late before the general availability of IncusOS. All right, if we go next page, what do we have here? Did it actually switch page? No, it did not. Come on. There we go. Okay, so more tweaks to the actual generation for the manifest. We can see more commits here around that logic. And then a whole bunch of work on documentation. So I'm assuming a bunch of you have probably seen it already, but if you go look at the documentation for IncusOS, we do have, and I usually use dark mode, there we go. We wrote quite a bit of it. We basically cover so we've got reference documentation for every single aspect of it, all the different applications, their APIs, all the services, all the system config stuff. And then we've added some more topics for like, how to handle kind of disaster recovery type stuff. There were questions around partitioning post-release, so we do have now documentation on that as well. Details on how to use the seeds to put in some data manually if you want to do that. How the security story works, and then getting started for a number of platforms. So we kind of had fun with that one with hardware being the same one I showed in the release video, but then we also have how to run it on Incus, both CLI and UI, how to run it on libvirt, also both CLI and UI, instructions for everything, how to run it on top of Proxmox, and then VirtualBox and VMware. The only one we don't really have covered is Hyper-V because it doesn't work. So we did some testing, we tried to make it work, it didn't. So we do have here a mention that Microsoft Hyper-V doesn't work. So yeah, quite a bit of documentation. We're obviously gonna be, like, we want to add tutorials and how-tos and stuff. So we want to add more content to it to make it, to kind of cover even more of the aspects that have come up on the forum or other channels since release. But that's been a big focus. I'm gonna skip over a lot of comments because of that. But basically we divided a bunch of documentation pages between Matthias and myself, and we just filled everything before we would consider it to be GA. There were also a few more kind of small bug fixes here and there that we saw partly as part of making the documentation and testing and like actually going through things. We saw a few inconsistencies and issues, so we cleared all of that. Part of the doc is also the integration of Swagger. So if we go look at reference API, then you've got the usual kind of Swagger API Explorer that lets you go look at all of the API endpoints for the REST API. We should probably make a note, actually, let me find a bug, that particular page should mention that the API is usually proxied through another application. So in most cases, you don't hit /1.0 or something, you actually hit /OS/1.0. So I should make a note of that. Let me assign that to Matthias, since I've got other things I'm dealing with right now. It's a doc, easy fix. Just make that a task, and we want it fixed by the next milestone. Update API documentation to cover application API proxying. All right, how can I cover it? Here we go. So I mean, there's a lot of that effectively. Like every time we think of something, or we see a note, or we see a comment, or we see someone's review of IncusOS that mentions something that doesn't seem ideal, we just file more issues, assign them, get them resolved. We've fixed a lot. So yeah, API with Swagger has been added. A lot more kind of documentation tweaking and structure and stuff. Like we also have built-in spell checking and a bunch of other tools similar to what we do with the Incus doc. So a lot more of those. Still filling in all of the sections. I'm looking for non-documentation stuff basically at this point, since can I cover the doc stuff? More documentation, more documentation, more documentation, readme. Okay, so that was my last main change kind of before considering it to be GA, and from that point on are fixes that we've done afterwards. So there's like some more strict validation and examples on how to do static IPs. The image customizer, I updated it to support a few more things. Like one thing is we wanted to get stats on who's downloading kind of what, for like what architecture, what type, and a general count. So now it's logging in a way that I can parse it easily to get some statistics out of it. And we've added support for directly uploading a network configuration through it, which then makes it possible to install in environments that need either like bonding, VLANs, or static IPs. So that was that tweak. Otherwise, the image customizer seems to have been working pretty well. It's not as optimized as it could be because it needs to decompress the image, parse it, modify things, and return it back to as compressed to the user. But it's been working reliably, and we've not really seen anyone complain about download speed. I think, like in my case, I can still download at around 50 megabytes per second from it, and most of the image is compressed and tiny. So while the file you download will show up as 3.2 gigs once downloaded, the actual number of bytes going over the network is around 550 megs. All right, next up, what did we do? Some more image customizer. So it was a network seed. Mentioned that Hyper-V doesn't work, so I spent about an hour trying to make it work on Windows, and then noticed that Windows, so Microsoft Hyper-V does not let you enroll specific secure boot keys. Either you use the Microsoft keys or you don't have secure boot. And that doesn't work for us, so that effectively makes it an unsupportable platform until someone finds a way to work around that and actually enroll our own keys. But that's the only platform we've seen problems with. We've done a few tweaks to make IncusOS work better on laptops. Since some people, that's the easiest hardware they have around to evaluate it. It made sense to improve that a bit. And we're getting close to the end of the changes since release, so more documentation on Hyper-V and stuff. Still that same page being tweaked. And then kind of the beginning of today's topic. So I've done some changes to how we handle kernel modules, and then already included the RBD module. So just kind of reshuffling things, like those packages have nothing to do with ZFS specifically. They're more like general packages. So I've moved them over to the kernel file. And then we followed that up with more tweaks to actually include the Linstor, the RBD package. That was a bit more fun to get that one going, because there were some issues with the packages, basically. Normally what we would do is we would just install a package source, which we can see, well, they're down here. Install a signing key, which we can see here, and then instruct make OSI to just install the package. That didn't work because their package, well, it's a bit of a Debian plus Linstor kind of issue, but basically macOSI does a multi-stage build. At the time it would install the kernel package, the kernel module package, /run would have been wiped effectively. And then the Linstor package has some permission it expects to see for run lock. The folder on the system does not exist. That causes apt to think that two packages want different permissions for the file and fail package install completely. So that didn't really work. I had to use a bit of a workaround instead of using a script. And we can see that script does work around the run lock issue, but the package will still not install. This time it's because of the kernel we're using. We're using a 6.17 in the kernel, and the RBD only builds up to 6.16. So then we need to do a bit of hackery, which is ignore the failure here, then copy the kernel config in the right spot because it expects .config to exist, which the Zabbly kernel does not provide. So instead you need to copy it from the actual location. And then lastly, we go into the DRBD source code, source folder, and we apply a patch. I couldn't put the patch nicely readable because there was no way to pass a clean file to that particular build environment. And putting an actual patch inline in the shell script was causing all kind of escaping issues. So instead I had to base64 encode it, which we can see here. All that this script does is effectively it turns off support for DAX, which is like an in-memory file system type thing, which the RBD does support. We don't really need it. And that was the reason why it wouldn't build on the 6.17 kernel. So this patch just turns that off completely in the code, at which point we can rerun the install without ignoring failures this time. It works fine. Then we assign the kernel module and we're good. So that took a lot longer than I expected. This was like the kind of thing I was expecting it to take me 5 minutes and be done. But because every one of those test builds takes 45 minutes, it literally took me, I think I started at like 8 p.m. one night and I finished at 8 a.m. the next day. I think I literally did like an all-nighter, 12 hours thing just to get this thing going. That was pretty ridiculous. But anyway, it works fine now. Next up, what did we have? A bit of a tweak to also list network interfaces that are not part of the config. That was pretty useful to do in this scenario. It's I'm just trying to remember how that worked. Yeah, so basically we have both config and state showing up for network devices. Actually, let me just get a terminal up on screen. Okay, so if we go look at Incus, admin OS, system, show laptop network, I guess. There we go. We can see it's got one network interface is listed here, and it happens to line up with the one listed here in config. The problem we had is if you've got interfaces that are not listed in the config, then they would end up not being listed in the state, effectively making it very difficult to know it even existed. So that's been fixed now, where like network interfaces that are not configured will still show up in the state, making it easier to actually add to the config. So there's that part. Then we had some other fixes from other users, which is great. So a few documentation fixes, typos, and the like. We tweaked a bit the handling of storage pools. So in this one, we're effectively making it so that we can't import an unencrypted pool to avoid degrading the security posture of IncusOS. Then I did a few more drivers that, of course, were causing some issues to some folks. And I think most recently, still on the storage side, we actually ended up relaxing things so that we can now create storage pools also on remote storage if it's coming from iSCSI or something like that. And we're looking at also relaxing things further on the local storage pool to allow to RAID it so that you can, if you're renting a server at like Hetzner or something that comes with 2 4TB drives, you'd be able to pick one for the OS drive. It will do the 35 gigs of OS stuff we need at the beginning, then the rest as the local storage pool, and you'll be able to do a RAID 1 of that local storage pool data to the secondary drive. You will lose effectively 35 gigs of the second drive, but other than that, it will work. So that's something we've been kind of looking at doing. Community contribution as well to make Tailscale serve function, so effectively allowing Tailscale to be aware that it's carrying the traffic of the Incus daemon itself, which then allows setting Incus to listen just on a loopback interface and then use Tailscale exclusively to access it. So that was a nice small addition that showed up. So those tweaks were still related to the storage pool I just described. Improving of the log messages quite a bit in preparation for trying to make network access a bit more reliable. We found that people with dodgy or high latency internet might struggle to connect to the image server occasionally, which is then not being retried. So you need to wait at either 6 hours for it to try again, or you need to manually do an update check, which is not ideal. So trying to improve that a bit. And that's effectively it for all of the changes that happened since the GA last week. Just gonna answer a few questions I saw in the chat. So, I mean, the first one was, how did the release go? I kind of covered that. It's been great. Quite happy with the reception. I think we're hoping that some more of the media will pick it up either on Friday or early this week. That hasn't quite happened. So there might be some of them. It's because they're looking at writing like a bigger article than just linking to the announcement. Some others, it's kind of timing of what other news might have been going on at the time. But in general, very happy with the reception. Very happy to see what we have, and we've got more big milestones kind of lined up for IncusOS, which will give us the opportunity to get in touch with even more users every time. All right. So there's a question on, is Hyper-V the Microsoft virtualization technology? Yeah, it is. So that's the only one that doesn't work is the Microsoft Hyper-V, which is built into Windows Server, and I think Windows Pro and some other versions too. It's a very artificial limitation, effectively. There's really no good reason for it to support secure boot with a different set of keys, but not let you also just set your own keys. But that's the decision they made, and that makes it effectively impossible to use IncusOS. Because other than that, it would be fine. Like the storage driver they're using, we've added to our images, it's good. Network should be okay. There shouldn't be any issue around TPM support. They have support for that already. So everything should be perfectly fine, except for this issue with non-configurable secure boot, unfortunately. All right. Anyway, now on to the topic of this live stream. So it is Linstor, and just loading the actual page. It feels like it. There we go. Where's Linstor? My list of stuff. Here we go. This one. So that's basically the last of the remote storage options in Incus that are not currently supported on IncusOS. So I wanted to fix that one. Also because I'm looking at moving some of my own environments from Ceph over to Linstor, as it should be providing better performance. Maybe just like a quick primer on what Linstor kind of is and does. For anyone who might be familiar with Ceph and Linstor are both effectively software-defined storage. Where they cannot differ is that Ceph is really designed to run a lot of servers, each contributing some small-ish amount of storage, and very heavily relies on memory caching to an extent, and on people not really needing low latency access. So Ceph can give incredible throughput so long as you write a mostly constant stream of data. One of the largest Ceph deployment is the LHC at CERN, so the Large Hadron Collider, where all of that data goes straight to a Ceph cluster and can get replicated to different research institutions across Europe. That's great, works fine for that, but if you put virtual machines or containers on it that expect very low latency access in order to feel snappy, Ceph kind of falls apart on that one. There are and part of it is because Ceph was effectively designed in a world where SSDs were not really a thing. Now that most servers are effectively flash only, Ceph's own kind of performance bottlenecks are really starting to show. The Ceph project has been working on a replacement for the storage daemon, effectively, so the OSD, with something called Crimson, which is designed specifically for SSDs. So that should get better. But in general, right now, if you're using Ceph, even like on full NVMe with fast networking, it feels sluggish unless you start using write caches and those kind of tricks to try and make it better. So Linstor is a bit different. It doesn't, unlike Ceph, it doesn't try to take data and shard it and then spread it across as many machines as it can effectively. What it does is more one-to-one replication. So you have a VM or a container, and its backing drive will be in 2 locations, period. One of the 2 locations being local. So one of the 2 writes will be extremely fast. The second write goes over the network, gets acknowledged, you're done. So in many cases, that provides significantly better performance because you know that for read operations, they can always be local and they will always be effectively native performance. And it's only when you're dealing with writes that you hit the network and you need effectively confirmation from the second copy that it has happened before you move on. So pretty different. I've not actually we've added the driver to Incus. I've got some of my customers who are using it. Everyone seems to be quite happy with it in general. I've not actually used it myself yet. I'm actually tying moving to Linstor to moving to IncusOS for my own clusters, which is why I'm actually working on this issue today. I just saw another question in the chat here. A simple question: is there any way to bypass TPM for all the hardware? No, but there will be. We do have an open issue to support a software TPM, which would then be backed by a USB stick. So you would need to plug in a USB stick or a SATA drive. It doesn't really matter, but just somewhere we can store a minimal amount of data to store the state of the software TPM. So that's planned, but it's not done yet. Then there was another question with regard to Linstor. Will you use the PPA for Linstor, or is Linbit finally creating a Debian repo? Funny you should ask. So some people might have noticed it briefly when I showed it earlier. If we go look at my change for the kernel driver for the RBD, you will see kind of what we're doing. Oh, great, thanks Firefox. Okay, let's reload. Okay, I didn't actually reload the page either. That was great. And I don't want Incus, I want IncusOS. Come on. There we go. Cool. So if we look at the RBD, this guy, you'll see what we're doing. We're using two repositories actually. So there is a Proxmox9 repo, which is what's used for Proxmox. Downside of that particular repo is it only includes packages for Intel, for AMD64. Wow, okay, my web browser is working great today. Okay, so if we look in here, if we look this, Proxmox9, the RBD9 pool. Okay, we can see it includes basically all of the packages needed to run Linstor on top of Proxmox. But you only have AMD64, so Intel 64-bit packages on there. That's not gonna really work for us. But then if you go look around the repo, you'll see something else. You'll see they actually have Bookworm, Bullseye, Buster, and Trixie repos. Those are different. Those, if you go in there, they do have both AMD64 and ARM64, so that's great. And if you look at the package list, it mostly looks the same, but it's not. It is missing, for example, the DRBD KMS package we need to install the kernel module is not in there. But then some of the other components like the controller and satellite and GUI and all that stuff, that's in there. So what we've done is a mix of the two. Basically, we're using the Proxmox9 repo, which is also based on Trixie anyways, and we use that to pull the DRBD9 DKMS package specifically, so the kernel module. Then when we need the rest, so when we need the DRBD utils, we pull that from the Trixie repo because that includes them. And that gets us the right set of packages on both Intel and ARM, and we seem to be generally okay with that. That's not to say I might well have missed something major. We might have some version issue or something. I don't know yet. Like, we're still working on adding support for this, but so far that's the plan. We can actually check. So here, Linstor satellite, which is what we care about right now. 132.3 is what's in the Trixie repo. What is in the Proxmox9 one? Linstor satellite 132.3. Okay, so that does line up. Again, no real guarantees that it's gonna stay that way, but we also have a few more of the Incus contributors are actively using Linstor at their place of work and are running it on Debian, have an interest in getting things properly packaged with something you can actually rely on. So if those packages directly from Linbit don't do the trick, we might end up having someone build their own for the pieces we care about at least. That's the other thing, is specifically for IncusOS, we don't care about 90% of those packages. What we really care about is the DRBD kernel module, DRBD utils, and the Linstor satellite. All of the other components are control plane components that will not run directly on IncusOS. IncusOS just runs the satellite code. So that's basically where the trick we've done and where we're at. Now, what I need to do, and I wasn't on this computer for a little while, so I think I might actually have to go check my laptop remotely, see if I'm missing any code on here. So what I want to do is actually pull the current version of the IncusOS code base. Okay, good. And then pull my own branch, rebase that on main. Okay. And this includes no changes. Okay. So yeah, I do need to go to my laptop real quick. Okay. Because this one should have the remaining changes. Yeah, includes Linstor satellite. There we go. So if I push that and put it back on my desktop, oops. Okay. Got a bunch of extra commits that need to be cleaned up, but that will pull the current code, and then we can do a build and kind of see where we're at. Okay. Here we go. So current state of things. It's basically that simple. The package repos are already installed because of the DRBD work. So all I'm doing right now is in the Incus image, also include Linstor satellite, and then do some dance to try and get the Java stuff to line up. So that's where we're at. Let me actually go and make a build real quick to see if like where we're at as far as that stuff. Does it actually work? Because I had to step away for a couple of days earlier this week, and I don't actually remember how far I managed to get this stuff. So what do I have here? Okay, Windows, kernel, IncusOS. Okay, I'm good. So going through the full build now so that I've got something I can play with here locally, and then we'll take it from there. But there's another issue I want to show as this happens to kind of just give an idea of the rest of the story. Because those who saw the live stream where I added Ceph support might remember I was not happy with the disk impact of adding Ceph. As it turns out, Ceph is nothing compared to adding Linstor. Linstor, for those who are not aware, is written in Java. So adding the Linstor satellite package is effectively putting all of Java, which is then adding 150 megs or something like that to the image. We're not gonna do that. Like that's not really gonna be particularly valuable. We can see it here actually. Current compressed image size is 288 megs. Adding Linstor bumps to 420 megs. So yeah, not gonna want to do that. Instead, what we want to do is split up this stuff into other layers so that we've got an Incus-Ceph application, Incus-Linstor application that include the Ceph and Linstor specific components in there. And so if you install a machine with just IncusOS and Incus, that's what you get. If you install with, if you then need support for Ceph or for Linstor, you'll use the applications API and install the Ceph or Linstor support. That brings in the extra application and layers everything together so that you get that. That should cause the normal IncusOS plus Incus install to actually go down in size, probably to somewhere around, like we're 288 right now. I don't remember what was before Ceph. It was probably like around 200 megs. I think Ceph was around 80 megs, something like that. So that would get us back down a fair bit, which would be nice. And yeah, that's going to be a change that's needed. I think the other thing I'm trying to remember is license-wise. So Linstor satellite, can we get the code? Is it on GitHub? Yeah, Linstor server. What's the license on this guy? Because that's another reason for wanting it to be separate. GPL v3. Okay, so that's not an issue. I was wondering if it was going to be a GPL, which would be more of a concern. GPL v3 we could get away with even for enterprise deployments and the like. But yeah, in general, I was thinking that it might be a good idea to split those into their own layer anyway, so that we can reduce kind of the attack surface and just the sheer size of the install for people who don't need those features. Like, we don't want to go too overboard either. Like, I don't want us to have like 50 different applications that you need to know to install. But for the big ones like Ceph or Linstor, I think it makes sense, and that should make things quite a bit better for everyone. All right, I'm just gonna see what's going on here. Lovely, something failed to build. Why? Not found. Right, we build the UIs nowadays. They are doing install, which means I need to install a big pile of Node. Hold on. Node and its 50 different packages. That's always fun. So anyway, the goal here is basically build an image and then go see if Java is behaving, because that was kind of where I had an issue last time. If it is, see if we can start the Linstor satellite correctly. And then at that point, the next step I would look at is kind of the settings side of things. We'll need to do like Ceph and add a new service to IncusOS. That will then control setting, like turning on the satellite service, and also any kind of security type stuff needed for it to integrate with a Linstor deployment. And I'll probably I'm not gonna land this feature without also doing the new application layer stuff, because I don't want the application to balloon quite that much in size. But that can be done kind of separately, still in the same PR, but I can do it basically off stream. Okay. Almost done. That's a lot of packages. Anyways, okay. Let's do make clean and do another build. There we go. Okay, so while this is going on, we can actually start doing some of the usual boilerplate for the service. So let's go and do that. We go in the IncusOS code base. So the easiest is going to be to look for Ceph, because it's going to be pretty similar in structure. So anything that we have for Ceph, I just want to replicate for Linstor, basically. Documentation will do last, as usual. So let's maybe do the API first. And that's actually where my Linstor knowledge or lack thereof is going to show pretty quick. I know you need to turn on the service, but I have no idea. I believe it's the controller talks to the satellites and not the other way around. So there's not too much on the configuration side of things. But I'm probably going to be extending that through a trial and error. One thing I could do is actually go look in the Incus repo how we set up Linstor during our test suite, because that's usually a good indication of any kind of setting we might need. Okay, so in this case, we install everything on the same systems. We've got the client, the controller, and the satellite. In our case, we're going to just use the satellite, but okay, so the modules are loaded, so we'll probably want to do that too. Effectively loading the RBD if it's not already. And then Linstor node create local runner IP. So that's a management command. So that should not be run locally on the system. But it does take the IP address and then just adds it. So yeah, given that, it kind of suggests that there's very little to configure on the satellite side. Let's see. Linstor satellite configuration. Let's see if there's anything interesting there. It's when the down help shows up. Okay. Yeah, the controller is the control plane, so that we're not touching. That will typically run as a container or VM, so we're not touching that. Satellite runs on each node, consumes local storage or provides storage services, receives all the information from the node running the controller. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, and user interface that runs then to talk to the controller. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Just looking if there's like anything we should do as far as config to tell it like what IP address to listen on, whether it needs to only support access from a specific controller or that kind of stuff. I don't know if there's any on that. Using a cluster, adding nodes. Okay, so maybe around adding nodes. What do we have here? Come on. Okay. Right, so it does try to connect over the network immediately. Fine. Starting enabling satellite node. Okay, so Linstor satellite. Ten seconds later, you will see the status in Linstor node list. Okay, so it just straight up connects. Is there no... What's the security story around that? Like, is there no keys, encryption, or anything going on? I'm kind of surprised. Okay. Is it in the further tasks, like do security? There'll be clients, basically. Okay, that's volumes. Configuring Linstor satellite. Okay, so there's some stuff here. Cool. So there is a config file. I can configure logging. Okay. What else? Monitoring. Okay, that could be interesting. Okay. Health check. Secure satellite connection. There we go. I knew there was going to be some kind of security thing somewhere. So that's a controller. Doesn't matter. Yeah, so I think the piece I actually care about is this one, which is the secure satellite connections. So how does that work? To have the Linstor use a TLS secure TCP connection, controller and satellites. Okay. So we create folders for Alpha is the controller, Bravo Charlie are the satellites, fine. Create keys for the nodes. Okay. They each have their set of keys. Satellite set config. Okay. Okay. All right. So based on that, what we should actually do config-wise is allow for the config of the satellite to include a SSL server certificate, and I guess it even has like a trusted set of trusted certificates. So that's to actually do authentication. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. It's just weird they don't do any of that by default, but okay. All right, so yeah, we should probably add support for that because that's how you would want to deploy it in production, realistically. Effectively generating, like having probably the central controller generate keys for every one of the servers, generate a list of the trusted keys, as in who the controllers are, and then deploy that to the different machines. So we should put that in the API. I'm also seeing that, yeah, there's type SSL and port. Where is the schema for that config? Because there's more stuff in here. Like, should we make the port configurable? Is there a bind address? Is there more stuff there? It seems like the keyword here is netcom for the network configuration. So let's see, Linstor satellite netcom. Is there documentation specifically for this? I mean, we keep seeing this one pop up, so I wonder if that's contains what we need somewhere. It doesn't. Okay, let's ignore that then. Let's tell Google to be a bit stricter on this guy. Because that's the one I just read, so sure, I've seen that. Security best practices kind of covers the same stuff. Maybe they have a base config. Oops. So if we look, it's under Linbit, probably. Yeah. Okay. Let's look for the controller. It might just be in server, but controller. Yeah, it's probably an install server that provides everything. Okay. Like, it would be cool if there was a just an example here for like the config schema and everything supported. And no mention of satellite anywhere in there. Okay. Alright, well, let's just brute force down then, shall we? So this image is still building. I'm just gonna git clone the entire repo and then grab for netcom and see if we can figure out what other config keys might be supported in there. Well, that pulls an entire library thing. Lovely. Is there something under config somewhere that we can use? Linstor config tool. Not really. It looks like it's done through another library that does just the network connection stuff. Because we see com, linbit, linstor, netcom. There's an example here. Linstor example. I don't know how complete that might be. It's not too bad actually. Okay, so they would be plain, and I think we saw SSL instead of TLS, but okay, sure. Bind address and port. Okay, so we should expose that. That would make sense. And then export server certificate, server key, and trusted certificates. Don't think we should do any of that password stuff because Java loves their PKCS 12 or 11. I don't remember which one they use. Or PKCS 7. I don't remember. There's too many of those. I think it's PKCS 12, the same as the transport format. But Java always basically does passwords for pretty dubious reason because it literally points to the file and the next config key is the password. So that's kind of pointless in my view. Whereas we tend to do X509 PEM certificates. So they are just the base64 version instead of being binary. All right. So that kind of gives us some ideas of what we might want to put in a config. So this is not going to be Ceph. This is going to be Linstor. Okay. There's no multi-cluster type stuff, so all that stuff can go away. We just care about service Linstor. There will probably be some state stuff eventually, but for now, let's ignore that. And yeah, we do need a Boolean to control whether the service is enabled or not. And then we can include the, say, listen address, port. Well, actually, listen address can include the port. That's fine. We can do it in one shot like we do for Incus. That's fine. Did we already do some TLS stuff in here? I thought we did for Oven. Let's try if we can line it up with Oven. That would make more sense. Yeah, TLS, certificate key type stuff. Let's pick up that general nomenclature. Come on. Okay, so we don't really have any client stuff. They're both server. So TLS certificates, TLS key. Actually, let's make server just to make it clear in case they eventually add the client certificate. So I can do that. TLS trusted certificates. So that would need to be a slice, and then just need to tweak. So server certificate, server key. We don't need to really give the protocol because if the keys are set, then hey, we are gonna be in TLS SSL mode. If none of the keys are set, then hey, we're gonna just be in plain mode. So that's easy enough. We don't need to duplicate that in the config. Okay, so TLS trusted certificates. All right, server key, server certificates. Okay, that's fine. This guy, we need to actually add listen address. Okay, so I think that's the rough structure we need for this guy. And we should probably go and do a Golang CI run fix to reformat everything, but other than that, we should be mostly good. Apparently syntax is busted, so not so good. Linstor line 9, what did I mess up here? String, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, it's not jumping at me what I messed up. Oh, never mind. Yeah. Okay, was that it? Is there anything else? Okay, good, 0 issues. All right, so it should have reformatted that one now. Yep, it's looking good. Got an API. Okay, let's see. Is the image still building? No, the image is done. Sweet, so we can actually go and try it on then. I can close this guy and do make test. Okay. So just like using the image I just built locally, so it's gonna install that and then reboot. And after reboot, sorry for the screen. My screen was slightly too big for it to fit, so it's causing some interesting artifacts here. Okay, there we go, it's rebooting. And it will come up with no applications. We need to then upload the Incus application and see if the satellite can actually be made to start. I'm not convinced. I had some issue with the Java stuff and a bunch of symlinks and weirdness on the system, so I don't know how far I actually got into fixing that. So that's going to be a good experiment here, just to see if that works or not. Okay. Okay, system is ready. All right, so we're good on this guy. Now I can disconnect from that terminal and test applications. That's gonna upload Incus in there. At which point I should be able to do test IncusOS, get the shell in there. Here we go. And let's see. So one of the issues I had was user in Java. That's still wrong. It's still pointing to etc alternatives when it should be pointing to wherever that is, user lib Java something. Okay, so that's a problem. That shows that my logic, even though it looks good on paper, it definitely does not work in practice. It is run from the IncusOS script. Because it's not the only place where we do that kind of trick, but clearly that is not working. Images, Incus, install this in. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to just do something slightly ugly probably to try and figure it out. The issue I'm running into is just IncusOS does has a bunch of different layers of different steps, and each of the step has access to, might be an overlay on top of another. And it's got some helpers in place too. So it's quite possible that running this command correctly writes to the target build environment, but then running those commands does not. And that I need to actually go and figure out the right environment variable or path or mount to write to. So my very ugly trick is to do this. So basically just holding the build at a point where I can go and inspect what's going on. So I'll do that because worst case scenario, we can use that. And then try to do the slightly more clever approach of otherwise seeing what the environment actually looks like and what I'm using. So install.sh here is being run as a prepare script. Make OSI prepare script. That is not the page I want. Why the make OSI man page literally never shows up in any result is still beyond me, but I'm getting used at this point to go here and click here every time I'm looking for actual documentation on this thing. Prepare script, there we go. Look at the script section, sure. Let's do that. Where's the big script section? It's somewhere below. Is that it? No. Still not it. Okay, this has at least some of the pointers. Run prepare script on image with final argument. Okay, sure. Scripts, there we go. So we're dealing with a prepare script. It's first call with final argument right after the package are installed. Do we actually check the argument? Sometimes we do in those scripts. Oops. Yeah, so we ignore the final case. We only set up the other case, okay? Right after the software packages are installed, it is called the second time with the build command line argument right after the build packages are installed and the build overlay mounted. Okay, so we are dealing with the build overlay, so that's the issue. This script has network access, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So it probably then behaves mostly like a build script. And build script has this and some other stuff in place. Yeah, so probably gonna need to use the same. I'm pretty sure I did try that earlier and it didn't work. But anyway, if we go look at the base here, we're doing some tricks very similar to that in 99. Yeah, remove symlinks.conf. This is using this time a build script, and the build script for this guy fixes symlinks by using this kind of everywhere. What I'm not sure is whether I do have this in this particular environment. So the sleep is going to be quite useful because it will let me inspect the actual environment I'm dealing with and the mount, and then fix the script once and for all and get it working. Anyway, while this is going on, let's just go back to the boilerplate stuff here. So we do have now an API for Linstor, so that's good. Next up, that I don't care. This one I do need to change a bit. So we're gonna go and do that. So we're gonna need an extra service to be defined, so we might as well put it in the loading logic already. And also need the state struct updated indeed. So let's look whether we've got Ceph right now. Linstor will show up here. So /1.0 services Linstor. Now we've got documentation everywhere, so we need to make sure to include it as needed. Is there any other Ceph stuff in this file? No. Okay. Then there's the loading order. It doesn't matter for this one, so it can just go alphabetical order. Here we go. And then the actual loading logic. So let's put it here. Okay. That should be about it for this one. Then here we've got again Ceph and SCSI, so Linstor, service Linstor. Okay. Is there any other mention? There is not. Okay, so that's gonna all the boilerplate stuff in place, except for documentation. And then we need to actually put a service in place. So Ceph is actually a reasonably complex one. We need something quite a bit simpler. Actually, the simplest of the bunch, I think, right now is basically Tailscale. So we can use that. Actually, oven is not too far away in this scenario, so let's maybe do oven. So oven, and it turns into Linstor. So let's do that. Just gonna check if my build is stuck at my build time, build delay yet. It's not. Okay, let's go back here. Don't need that, don't need that. All of the oven all caps can be replaced. All of the oven lowercase can be replaced. There we go. So that's kind of the boilerplate stuff. Services, config. Okay, on update, what do we do? So save the state as we exit. If it's currently enabled and it's going disabled, then we stop. That's fine. Otherwise, apply config. Then if it's enable the service, and otherwise restart. Okay. I don't think we need a. So in this case, it is a service where it needs to start and then you configure it. That's not really what we want in this case. We're just gonna want start to do it. So if it's not enabled and it becomes enabled, then we start it. Okay. And then we always configure. I think that's wrong. I think we're just gonna make it apply the new config and then just start it in this scenario. And if it's already enabled, we'll stop it effectively. Okay, just looking at the logic here. So we can make things mostly idempotent in this case. So if the new state doesn't want it enabled, we stop it. And that can be the end of that. We don't need to run anything else. Other than this thing needs to still run. Okay, fine. Feels like there's a better flow I could be using. So in this case, so that's the stop case. Return now. And then if we're not asked to stop it, then we do the same thing, update the config. And do we have a restart function in there? I don't remember. But that's kind of what we want. Like if we're switching, you know, one of the example would be we were switching from TLS to non-TLS or back and forth. It would make sense to handle it that way. So anyway, if the thing is currently, what we actually want is if it's currently enabled. So if n state services Linstor is enabled, and then we stop it. Stop any running daemon. Okay. Then we want to update the config. Starts the daemon if needed, and then if the new config has it enabled, then we do start on that. think that's better for this kind of config. So yeah, we basically any update stops the daemon if it's currently running, applies a new config, starts it back if it's supposed to be enabled. And that should do it for this kind of service. Unlike some others, this should not negatively impact anything currently ongoing. It won't break any existing instance. We just restart the local management of the service effectively. So that should be fine. So get is good, update is good. Stop, okay, well that should be easier. That's just Linstor satellite. And we'll just blow that away. Like that. Start, we'll just want to, oops, stop Linstor. Okay. And here should be the generation of the config file itself. So we just generate it every time, so we don't need to think about it too much. Should it start? So if it's enabled, it should start. The service struct itself is good, and the configure thing can go away. Okay, that should be it for the general structure. Run calling CI. It should yell at me because of the to-do at least. Okay, it yells at me about more things than just the to-do. OS and the process. So process I'm definitely using. And actually, no, I'm not. I'm using systemd directly. Okay, that's fine. Linstor enabled, undefined. End state services, Linstor type. Linstor has no failure method. What? But we had one in there. Oh, it's under config. That's why I just typoed this stuff. Okay, go to CI. Yeah, complaining about the to-do, but otherwise we're good. All right, that's what we want to see. Is this one stuck? Yes, it is. Good. So let's go and debug our image. If we look at the image build, I should be able to find it here. Sleep 30 minutes. Perfect. That's what I want. And now let's go look at the environment of this guy. So I want a sorted version of that, please. Thank you. Okay, so the slash build root, that could be relevant here. That might be what we need. There's no des there, so I can't use that, but build root might be what we want. Let's see. So if I actually go in there, 1.145.92 mount. Okay. Now build root, that looks like this. Okay. And if I look at what I have, so if I look user bin Java, does that exist? No. Build root user bin Java, does that exist? Yes, and it's wrong. Cool. All right. So that's probably the answer. Let's go look at this. All of those need a, was it just such build root? Is that what we've done in the past? Yeah, we've done in the past. All right. Apparently I don't know how to type today, but nothing new here. And I know I could also do it more programmatically, but I don't mind. Come on. Okay, these, and then same deal here. All of those are gonna be build root. So it's basically all of the Java binaries. They normally symlink to /etc alternatives on Debian systems. It's used so that you can pick what version of Java you want and not have them conflict for which one is the active one. But because we don't have a /etc, in the case of IncusOS, that's a bit of an issue. So that's basically what we're dealing with here. Just cleaning up that stuff. Now, if I cancel this guy and do a new build, actually I should do make it clean. Here we go, do a new build. That hopefully will get me functional Java this time around. And while this happens, let's see, this guy can actually build it. IncusOS D. Yep, builds fine. It's good. From what I remember, Ceph had some special tricks, specifically to not show up if you're not on a system with Incus installed. Let's see how that worked. I don't actually remember. Oh yeah, there's a supported key. I think that's what was doing it. Supported, yeah. Okay, so we need that in our Linstor one as well. This will change as I fix that that other issue. The one about splitting the images, the application specifically, but that will take care of that. Okay. Still good. Static analysis should only complain about the to-do. Yep, all right, let's go and take care of that to-do then. Well, this guy is still building. Internal services, Linstor, there. Okay, so we need to actually generate the config file. Just need to get the Linstor config again. It was this guy here. Satellite example, yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's the one we want, cool. Do I want a template for that, or what do I want to do? It's not quite complex enough to really want a template, but then again, what did I do on this guy? It was just static. Yeah, I didn't do any templating. Okay, also, where's that thing located? I think I saw that in the docs earlier. In here. Okay, that's the path for it. So I need to create this guy. Actually, just need to make the let's see, Linstor. I'd like it to exist with 755 is fine. Never remember which syntax we actually use commonly for that. So let me find another one. Make the okay. The errors is OS error exist. Okay, let's choose that. I just saw we actually have it very tight for Ceph, so I might as well make it tight for this one too. Like, yeah, I mean, there's a comment about the quality of the doc strings, and like, yeah, well, they're kind of pointless, most of them, but that's kind of what happens when the language enforces you having doc strings, as if all of those are external APIs that someone needs to actually look through in documentation. Like, it's the start function on the Linstor service. It is gonna start the service. And sometimes we get lazy enough that we don't even want to mention like starts the Linstor service, and we just keep it generic so we can copy paste it between files. Okay, so in case of error, return the actual error. Then we will need to write the actual file. we can kind of do it in one shot with treat the writer out of effectively OS create of, I mean, it's a fixed path. I don't even need to use join. Linstor, and what was it exactly? Linstor underscore satellite. Like that. And I think create takes a mode too, so let's keep on the 700 game for that. If we get an error at this stage, retype the error. If we don't, we need to defer closing of the file descriptor. Okay. And then we can actually write the thing. Don't care. Format printf. I want to write into the writer and then the actual content. So don't think we need to mess with the logging on your not really. It's really more of this config we kind of care about. So that's the mode, listen address, listen port. So we can write this chunk. And then do something like if, what's the config stuff again? It's n dot, yeah, it's this whole guy here. Just make our life slightly easier by grabbing the config from the top. There we go. Then we can do if config dot tls server certificate is not empty, and tls server key is not empty, and config tls server tls trusted certificates of things. It's bigger than 0, then we can actually write the rest of the config. Okay. Can keep the password as they are because I really don't care. Let's bump to 1.3 just so we've got something that's actually from this decade. And then server certificates. So that should be the path for this guy. So we probably want Linstor / server Linstor trusted, something like that. Then we need values for those 3 guys up here. So okay, let's do something like that. This is okay, let's do this. We can do a step up here for like master config. And what I want is a flag for like is TLS, which is basically this condition. So we can simplify things a tiny bit here. Okay. And then basically the way that works is we'll do bind type is gonna be plain unless is TLS, in which case bind type turns into, and I believe they were saying SSL, which I don't love it. Yeah, SSL, there we go. So here we go. And then if config.listen address is not empty, because the default would be bind address, bind listen on everything, both protocols basically. That's what I would want. And bind port is 3366. But then if actually move that here, because if is TLS, then the default bind port turns into 3367 they were showing. There you go. And then if we have a listen address that's not empty, we need to do some parsing on that. I don't remember if we got that parser exported by Incus, because that's kind of what we like here. But there's a basic one in Go for that. Split host address or something like that in the TS package, or in the net package. Yeah, split host port. No, that's what I want. So let's do bind address bind port on net.split host port, and then we pass in config listen address like this. Just wondering what happens if you don't pass in. Okay, it does require a port effectively. Okay. All right. So that's fine. That gives us those two fields. Also an error actually. Okay, so just give us basic support for that. Let's see. 92. Right, so error has not been mentioned before. Great. Let's fix that. There we go. Next, net has not been imported. It's easy. Let's fix that. Next, error not defined for at 102. Sure, fix that. OS not imported. Okay. Getting there. Errors not imported. Okay. All right, so everything's passed now. Apparently this one does not take modes, so that's fine. Just gonna make sure we've got very tight modes just in case. It's fine. 147. Okay, so that should give us a very basic config for this guy. Let's do static analysis if some stuff needs fixing. Yep. Let's see how much of that can be auto-fixed for us. None of it. Lovely. Services, service Linstor 126. What's it complaining? Okay. So bind port is a string somehow? Oh, I guess it does not pass it as an integer. Huh? Oh, that's unfortunate. Anyway, doesn't really matter. In this case, I can just fix the type. Unnecessary use a formatting function in 123. Oh, because it's static. Yeah. Okay. Just need to fprint then. And we're good. Okay. Image build is done too. Okay. So let's just run a test, then test applications, and hope that Java is working. And then in parallel, I effectively implemented all of the service logic we need, minus documentation and minus the certificate handling. But otherwise, that should be fine. There's a bit of a mess with the go.sum recently. I need to clear it. Can already start slicing some of those changes. Usually state goes second. Yep. Internal state. Come on. Okay. Then once we have that, we can add the actual service. Okay. Then got the rest entry. And the other one is kind of unrelated. Okay, so the install is done. Let's do test applications. So we're gonna upload that stuff. Okay. And let's see. Hey, I can autocomplete Java as a command. It's not happy, but it's installed. So that's progress. Let's try. So if we do the Linstor satellite, I'm sure it's gonna blow up on that same error from Java I just ran into, but still. Yeah, it blew up, but that's still better than in the past. So Linstor satellite. Okay, error loading Java security file, yeah. So the problem is that Java probably has a bunch of stuff in slash not user, basically. Probably some policies in slash etc or something that it needs, which is a bit of a problem here. Do I have Java on my machine? I do not. Okay. Yeah, I don't really want to install it either, but yeah, ideally I would want to be able to run strace or something like that to see exactly what it needs to access, because as much as Java loves super long stack traces, that actually tells me nothing as far as what the problem is. Anyway, let's just launch a container so I can poke at that thing a bit. There's a question from Jared about the hard-coded password for Linstor. It doesn't matter. They are passwords just for the certificate files that Linstor loads or that Java loads for Linstor. And like basically the certificate file has restricted permissions on it, and anyone who has the permissions to read that file also has the permission to read the config anyways, so the password is effectively meaningless. So we're just gonna hardcode the same one everywhere. That's not really an issue. Like we see that pretty commonly if you install like a Unify controller or those kind of things. They literally like hardcode Unify or something as the password for all of their key stores, because Java requires a password, but it doesn't require it to be a good password, and the password is not actually adding any real security, so people just hardcode it. Let's see. So default GRE is probably what it pulled. So the default Java runtime environment. Sure, let's install that. What I'm basically trying to do is just replicate the issue. So install it, check that Java works, go in /etc to find what kind of Java related stuff is in there, move that away and see if it works the same way. Because if it does, then we can look for workarounds. Some workarounds that we've done in the past is including the data in /user instead and then making a symlink on startup. or just changing Java in this case to tell it to look elsewhere. So I'll have to see. Okay, so Java is happy. Now if I look at /etc and I look for Java stuff. Okay. So which one of those does it actually need? Is that the issue? So if I move that here. Yep, that is the issue. Okay. All right, and it includes a bunch of stuff. So yeah, none of that stuff really should be in etc in our case. So if we're moving that to user share, okay, there's nothing there. So if we just move it straight up to user share and then create a symlink from user share Java 21 OpenJDK to same folder in etc and then run it, that would be fine. Cool. Yeah. As I mentioned, like this, the hardware password could be an issue for some security scanners type stuff or static analysis. Yeah, I mean, ours doesn't seem to freak out on that. And clearly, Linstor is already on GitHub. So if it was going to be a problem through the GitHub secret scanner or whatever, it would already have triggered on the Linstor repo itself. So we're probably fine. But yeah, it's kind of silly that Java effectively requires a password on those key stores when it doesn't really do anything, but then everyone has to hardcode secrets. So it's kind of weird. All right, so let's just do the dance that we need. So in here, what we need to actually do is move build root etc. What was the actual path? I go in C1. Yeah, this guy. So this needs to move to build root user share and that same path here. And then we need to do a systemd trick, which is in extra, I think. No, not in extra. It's in, I thought it was in extra, apparently not. Or is it in base images, macOS extra? Yeah, okay. Lib systemd system temp files or something. Where is that stuff now? It's how we handle the CA certificate stuff. CP, okay. I thought we had a thing that was creating a symlink for that. Oh, apparently we don't. Okay. What else do we do with symlinks? AppArmor has the same issue. So let's look for AppArmor. That would give us what we want. Yep, there we go. Temp files AppArmor. That's what I need. macOS images, macOS extra. Okay, we might need to copy paste some of that. So just need the same structure in here. So macOS incus macOS.extra, and we actually need the rest of the path. So user lim temp files.d. Actually, should we do that? Because I don't remember when we run temp files, but we might not be running it at the time where we can trigger that correctly. Yeah, temp files will run on startup, not per applications. We kind of need to put it in the global hack effectively. Cool. So let's just do that. We'll do. I'm not sure why AppArmor is at 0.4, but okay. We'll do 0.4 Java. There we go. And then do where's that path again? not this one. Yeah, this. Okay, so if I did that, we need it to be a link from this path to this path. Okay. That should give us a working image this time around. That's it. I'm a bit over time compared to my plans for this live stream, so I'll probably leave it here, but that should give us effectively a working image. I'm just gonna merge that commit with the base image here. Okay. And then lastly, I'll trigger a full image rebuild, but you won't see the end of that because that's gonna take too long. So I'm just gonna be doing that effectively off screen. But yeah, that's it for this live stream. Hopefully this was entertaining somehow. It's like we're very happy with the state of IncusOS as it is now. We've got some pretty big plans. I mean, Linstor support was something that was already coming, but we've got, if you look at some of the issues and milestones, we've got quite a few nice things coming up. So if we look at the milestone for basically the end of this month, we've got, I mean, Linstor support is there, some more tweaks on system config, adding netbird alongside the tailscale stuff, and some general cleanup. But where things get quite a bit more exciting is looking at what we have for next year, so early 2026. That's where we've got support for allowing effectively cloud login to eliminate the need for the TLS certificate login that we have right now. That will make it a lot easier for folks to start using IncusOS, even like, you know, even like completely through a web UI effectively if they want to. That's also where the software TPM stuff will come in. There's more slightly longer term things we're also working on, which I think are currently milestoned as probably later. Yeah, offer a full Incus deployment, which is kind of another step afterwards where we want to be able to take IncusOS and tell it, don't just initialize Incus, but like deploy everything, where it would also create like an internal project, internal containers to then run like a reverse proxy, authentication stack, authorization stack, the monitoring stack, all of those services, everything will get deployed as part of that. And then you'd be able to cluster from this point on, adding other machines, and then getting a full HA cluster with all of the usual services. So that's something we're looking forward to. That will make it a lot easier to use Incus and through IncusOS in home labs, in SMB environments, and even in some larger corporate environments. Then if you want to go full large scale, that's where Operations Center comes in, where you can manage fleet of like thousands of IncusOS machines and create clusters on top of that, and then manage that whole thing together. All right, so that's where I'm gonna leave you. Thanks a lot, everyone, for watching. Thanks a lot for the questions and comments. Thanks a lot for everyone who tried IncusOS and gave us feedback. That's really appreciated. As I said, like, we still have quite a lot to do. Just right now, we've got 25 issues open, 6 pull requests are going through review and being merged. Like whether it's improving documentation, whether it's improving the code, whether it's adding new features, we've got a lot of things going on. And yeah, it's just gonna get better from here. So thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.